Hey everyone, welcome back. With the massive hype around the release of the second season of Squid Game, a lot of new details have surfaced about the show. There are so many Easter eggs, hidden references, and hints for the upcoming season. But have you ever stopped to think about how this show is actually based on real events? That's right. The creators of Squid Game have said that in 2008, they already had the plot idea for a film about these kinds of deadly games. After several years of thinking it through, they finally decided to turn it into a show about these terrifying games existing in real life. So today, I'm going to show you the shocking truth behind the real Squid Game. It really existed in the world and under real conditions. If you're curious about the true story that inspired the show, let's dive in. In the 1970s, the South Korean government became concerned about the growing number of homeless people, the poor, and those struggling with alcoholism. They realized that the upcoming Olympics would be a huge global event, and they couldn't let their country be embarrassed by such visible poverty. So they started conducting selection events on the streets, very much like what we see in the show. They invited the poorest people to what was called the Brothers' House. This house was marketed as a place for opportunities, but in reality, it was far more sinister. The people who were desperate to make money were easily lured in, not suspecting the horrors that awaited them. Even pregnant women who had no money to survive were offered a deal. They could sell their child abroad once it was born, and they'd receive money in return. The poverty-stricken class didn't think twice and took the offer. But after hearing about the Brothers' House, we can begin to understand the horrific things that took place there. It wasn't a social experiment, it was a nightmare. Now, we're getting closer to understanding the real Squid Game. All of this was, of course, covered up by the law. They claimed they were just helping the poor, but after 10 years, the people from this lower class started disappearing for obvious reasons. Some relatives tried to investigate what happened, but as the years went by and the country's economy grew, the government denied any wrongdoing. They insisted that the Brothers' House had never existed. But over time, some details came to light, and it was suggested that the house had actually been a retirement home. So, what you've heard so far might sound crazy, but it was a real situation. Of course, it's different from what we see in the series. Squid Game is well polished, featuring rich people in a high class setting. In reality, though, nearly a century ago, this story inspired the show. In this real life version, only the poorest people were targeted. Those who thought they were just getting a helping hand and a chance to improve their lives with the upcoming Olympics. They were promised money for participating in games, but in reality, no one received any money. The truth was that these people were being exploited. No games were played, just terrifying intimidation by the wealthy, very much like the VIPs in Squid Game. This story is backed by the actors of the show themselves. The show really is about how the rich love to entertain themselves at the expense of others. And this happened in Korea almost 100 years ago. At that time, the economy was in ruins, poverty was widespread, and the elites wanted to find a way to have fun. The whole thing was conveniently disguised as law, and no one paid attention. As I said, this was all happening to poor people, so no one really cared about them. There were only about 200 people in the brothers' house, and only 5-10 of them had relatives who tried to look for them but eventually gave up. And here's the most important point of this video. All the photos and material you've seen during this story were taken from that very brother's house. Today, this place is more commonly known as Squid Game. Now, you know the true story behind the show and that the Squid Game really did happen in real life. Let me know what you think in the comments.